Hi, I'm Mike Freeman. I do Elvis tours in Memphis. Today we're doing an Elvis tour in Tupelo and Nashville. We're 100 miles from Memphis here in Tupelo, Mississippi. We do the tour here because we're starting at the beginning. This is where Elvis Presley was born. In fact, he was born inside the very house that is behind me. And as you can see, it's a humble home, 2 rooms. The house was equipped with no electricity, no running water, no plumbing. Elvis Presley's life was a rags to riches story, and this is the rags of it, if you will, the humble beginning. Elvis actually lived in this house only 3 years. Another tragedy unfolded. Vernon, his father, was caught doing something he should not have done, and he served 8 months in Mississippi State Prison. He also lost his home, and the family had to move again. Their lives through Elvis's first 13 years here was a struggle. Keep clothes on their back, food on the table. Finally, in 1948, they left Tupelo for Memphis to seek greater opportunities. Today, this house has a very different status. It's the most visited home in the state of Mississippi. It's part of the Elvis Presley Birthday Park, a Tupelo facility. And the home has been restored to approximately its appearance in 1935. Also on the grounds is a museum that describes Tupelo and Elvis's life during the 1930s and 1940s. It's a chapel that's dedicated in his memory, a statue of him at age 13. We're going to start our Tupelo and Nashville tour here. We're going to see many sites in Tupelo that were part of Elvis's childhood. But before we leave this birthplace, we're going to talk to a couple of Elvis's childhood friends. All right, let's go. We're here with Guy Harris, one of Elvis's friends, one of his best friends when he was a child. Now, you grew up around here, is that correct?
That's true. I was born and raised at 207 Adams Street, which is right in front of the Assembly of God Church down Adams Street. The street was named after my grandfather, Guy Adams.
Really? When do you remember, when did you meet Elvis for the first time? Do you remember?
Well, of course, he was 3 years older than I was, so I had a little catching up to do. But I guess really, actually, when we were kids, just out playing and all, we got real thick because Gladys, his mother, and my mother were always friends through the years, and you know, best of friends. And so our relationship and friendship just began at a very young age, you know.
What sort of things y'all used to do? You used to get in trouble, didn't you?
Well, we did do that pretty often. You know, we would, especially if we went to the swimming hole, it was off limits to us. But that was just part of it, I guess. We made about everything we played with. We made back in those days. We would make little toy cars, and we'd play on the houses with them. You know, we'd spend a day or two. Making us a flying Jenny, that we called it. It was a pole stuck up in the yard with a axle drove down in the top of it, and we'd make us a couple of wooden boxes and put it on each end and put axle grease on the top of it, and we would spin each other around in it. And,
oh my goodness.
And you know, just whatever we could come up with to entertain ourselves, because in this area out here there wasn't a lot of money back in those days, but you know, everybody was happy, everybody had a good time, and really enjoyed being with each other and all that.
Well, you had to be creative to have fun back then.
Well, you know,
you didn't have a lot of gadgets to buy.
Yeah, you know, everybody had a sense of humor, you know, and a lot of those kids, you know, them being a little ahead of me about 3 years, they'd come up with some of these things that, you know, that like we built a boat one time. And they had me holding I had a wire around a can of tar and holding it over open fire, melting a tire to pour in a boat to keep the water out. Well, the can failed and the tar went all over my arm, and I got severely burned on one of my arms that day. And of course, I don't think the burns hurt as bad as my whipping I got from my mom for being involved in that. So as you see, we just had really had a good time. We went to school together, we went to church together, we played together, and back in those days it was really probably a 7-day-a-week deal unless somebody was out of pocket. You know, also the other kids around our area played with us. Up on Kelly Street, it was the Farrells, the Clarks, the Morgans, some Presley. The Presleys lived up there also. Elvis's cousins and things, and which were always a little bit younger than we were. But you know, it was just a fun time in East Tupelo in those days.
Did y'all play any sports?
We played touch football. We'd play basketball. We'd play softball. We'd play wiffle ball, and just, you know, everything that kids do. And occasionally in the winters we'd get a snow occasionally, and we'd have a lot of good snowball fights back in those days.
I can imagine Tupelo getting snow, but I guess it did.
Yeah, you know, it was few and far between, but we got more snow back when we were kids than we do in these days now. But I'd say mostly, and we would get out and go up and down the streets, you know, where the city had cleaned out the ditches for the water runoffs, and we'd pick up iron, and we'd save it till we'd get us 2 or 3 wagonfuls of it, and then we'd pull it into town and sell it, and get us a little money to go to the movie on a Saturday. We usually got to go to the movie if we had the money about once a month.
Once a month for movies?
Yeah.
And
you know, in the movies, 10 cents for one of them to get in, and the other one was 15. So we got to go to 2. We got to go to one about 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, and then the other one had started at 1. But our mode of transportation was by foot, so we had to walk into town and walk out. But we were always had to be home before dark.
Yeah.
On any given day that they'd give us permission to go into town and do stuff like that.
Were your parents strict on you?
Very strict. You know, it was, I guess you've noticed through the years, and noticed him as he's coming up there in Memphis after he moved there, it was always yes ma'am and no ma'am, and it wasn't just you know, to your, it was always to all your superiors, the people that older than you and all that kind of stuff, you know, that we did it. And if you happen to not make that yes ma'am and no ma'am, when you got home, you paid the fiddler for that too.
Oh my. Yeah.
So everybody was, all these kids in this area was disciplined real well. We didn't think about, there was a few that smoked cigarettes and things. Now, he and I never smoked any, and a lot of those guys that grew up with us, they never smoked until they got grown.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And I never did take up the habit. I you know, just one habit. I never did like the habit, so I never did take it up. And I would question them as to why did you wait till you get grown to do this? You know, knowing the answer that was they didn't want their parents catching them doing this sort of stuff. And we'd play in these woods here back to our left here. Back in those days, we call those Reese's woods.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the wood, actually the wooded area started just north of our house there, and went probably up about 2 or 3 miles, and then we'd walk that area. We'd play in those pastures out there where they let cattle graze. Of course, the city's got some real nice ball complexes in that area at this time, but we would play in those areas down there, and we'd always try to make it a point to go to our favorite swimming hole. If we had a chance, we would slip us out something to swim in, and if we didn't, we'd just go in the nude, you know. Of course, we was all just little bitty fellas, and
skinny dipping,
we
oh
called it. But we had a nice sandy beach on the west side of the creek. Of course, my brother and I were the smallest in the two, if he was with us, playing with us, and but some of the bigger guys would always get us across the deep water and get us to over on the beach side, and then they would play with us out in the water and stuff and watch after us real close. But those parents still didn't go for that.
They didn't know.
You know, it was what I liked about it. Everybody was real close, close knit, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And so we really had a wonderful time together.
Yeah.
Sure did.
Yeah. Even though Elvis left for Memphis, you still continue to be friends with him, is that right?
We did, yeah. He would, of course, they would come back here on occasions, and we would visit. In fact, when Gladys Vernon and them left Tupelo and Elvis in the 40s, well, my aunt left Tupelo and went with them because they all left East Tupelo here seeking work, and that was the reason for going to Memphis. And they all lived in the same boarding house. I don't remember exactly where it was at up there. And the Presleys lived on one side, and my aunt and this other friend of hers is up there, which I don't recall her name, lived on the other side. And they ate dinner together probably, my aunt would say, 2 or 3 nights a week, and then, you know, they would let them have their privacy also. But it was, you know, for them it was just like, you know, it was somebody there that they knew. They wasn't just there alone, you know. Of course, he probably made friends a lot faster than his parents did, because I'm sure Gladys got out mixed and mingled. But now in those days when Elvis was growing up, well, Gladys was she stayed home and kept Elvis, and I think that probably continued on after they went to Memphis.
Yeah.
There. But we would visit Graceland on Sunday afternoons. We'd try to be there around the noon hour, because we knew that we were going to get something to eat, because he would be getting up about that time.
Good timing, good timing. Yeah, that's good timing. Yes, it was.
And we'd go in. Well, we'd holler at Vester. Vester used to live in the house with my aunt, just 3 houses down the Reese Street here on the right, and my aunt lived on one side, Vester and them. So my brother would either get out of the car and holler to Vester to open the gate for us, or either he would just roll the window down and holler, and Vester let us in, and he'd call up to the house and say, well, the Harris boys is on the way up there. So we'd drive on up and park out in front of Graceland and go in, and Gladys would usually be sitting around in there, her and Miss Minnie, and of course the cooks and Vernon and all of them would be mixing and mingling. And so she'd say, tell the cook what you guys want to eat, and and then she always called me Guy Thomas. If you'll know, in the olden days, just about they used the whole name, kids, you know. So she'd say, come here, Guy Thomas, tell me what's going on down at home. In fact, I think that, you know, East Tupelo here was always home to her, you know, and it was just, you know, it was just if we didn't go up there every week, it was probably every other week or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And after he'd come down, and after we'd sit there and talk and have a little visit, then we'd go outside. We'd either play touch football out on the north lawn of Graceland, or we would go out back and look around and just talk and just have a good time visiting with each other. It was always, you know, there wasn't any difference in the time that the Presleys moved from where they did to Graceland when they left East Tupelo with us, as it was any other time. I mean, the door was always there, open for us.
You mean they
always welcome?
They didn't act any different because they had a lot more money? Or?
Not a bit. And in fact, Gladys, when my mother and them would visit with Gladys and them at Graceland, which she did in over on Audubon Drive in Memphis also. She would always ask my mom. She'd say, "Fay, anything you need, anything I can do for you?" And you know, on occasion, her mother had, you know, some things going that us kids didn't know about. But I mean, we knew about it, but we didn't ask any questions. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
That's just one thing that the kids in the early days didn't do. You never question your parents about anything.
So Elvis really was the same guy. He didn't change.
Yeah, he was the same guy toward me, Mike. You know, the last time that I really had a very long visit with him, probably when in 1970, he and Bill Marsh, the former mayor of Memphis, and also the county sheriff there in Shelby County visited down here. And you know, I was on the Tupelo Police Department back in those days from '63 to '83, and so he called and said they were coming into town, and we had a good visit that time. And he and I and Priscilla, we came out here to the park just about dusk dark. We walked around and talked and that kind of stuff. And I remember him telling Priscilla as we was walking out across the front of the museum here that he told us that, well, Guy Thomas was my best friend when I lived in Tupelo. He said we had a lot of good times in this area up here together. And he wanted to know if many people came and swam in the swimming pool up here on the park, and also he wanted to know if me and Junior, my brother, ever played any ball over there on the ballpark. And I told him yeah, and he was satisfied with that. So he was pretty well satisfied with everything.
Yeah. Did he come back to Tupelo that often?
Well, he did more in the earlier days, Mike, than he did say in the 50s, the late 50s.
Yeah.
I'd come in from school a lot of time, and I'd see his car sitting in front of the house whenever I would turn the corner headed for the house, and I said, well, OEP's down. And so him and my mom might be sitting there talking. He might have come in around noon or something like that.
Yeah.
She'd fix him a bite to eat if he wanted something, and they'd sit around and talk. And you know, she always, you know, and she said he really enjoyed sitting around just talking to her, because he always thought a lot of my mother, and he always called her Miss Fay. Of course, we always just called Gladys, you know. But you know, if we were playing at our house back in those days, in the early days, well, and my mom, if Gladys was out of pocket for something, if Mom disciplined me and my brother and whoever else was there, including him, she disciplined him.
Really?
And it was vice versa. If we were playing at the Presleys, or you know, at his house, it was vice versa. I know one day on this lot just south of us here, he and I spent I don't know, the biggest portion of a morning digging up old wild rose bushes and replanting them. Just something to do, just something for us to get out and do is what it amounted to. Yeah.
Got in trouble for that?
Oh, well, no, not really. You know, I wound up taking one down to our house, and I planted it right beside the house, and the thing would grow up on the side of the house in the summer. Of course, my mom liked roses, so she didn't complain a whole lot about that. But she said, "Son, you could plant that rose bush anywhere except right there," you know. And I agreed with her, you know. But of course, you know, I was scared not to agree with her. I know one time I had got into something down there, and she said, "Go get me a limb off that tree out there." Well, I went out there and found the smallest snake yet, just cut it off real quick, took it in. Well, she whipped me about 2 licks, and that thing broke. Well, she grabbed the knife up. I said, "I'll go get it, Mama." She said, "No, you've had your opportunity." so it was just, but I mean, you know, a lot of respect for everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Didn't give her any lip.
No, you didn't give him any lip. You know, and if he was going to get to go, so I know one time they was going swimming out the state park, man, and I broke down and started squalling and carrying on. And she said, "I've done told you can't go." Well, one of the Presleys said, "Well, if you'll let him go, we'll be sure we watch him." She'll say, "Well, that's the only way he's going to go, is for y'all to be sure that you watch him real close." But, you know, we were just close-knit. I guess the people in this area back in the 40s and early 50s were as close as a lot of families are today. I still refer to this area, even though it's Presley Heights, Elvis Presley Heights, you know, I still refer to it as East Tupelo, but that's just been instilled in me for nearly 70 years now. Yeah. So it's hard to get out of my car. But however, I'm proud if they was going to change the name of the thing, it was him or one of us.
Sure.
That grew up in this area, because he was a heck of a guy. I really liked him, and we were real close.
Yeah.
And
well, tell me about the big day, '56. So you did the show at the fair.
Oh yeah.
2 shows actually, but and they had the parade for him and all that.
Yeah,
and
yeah, they did. And
did you get to go to any of that stuff?
I did. I went to see him down there, and later on, I had a friend in Memphis, and I said something about the black velveteen shirt he wore at the fair. She said, "Well, would you like one of them?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Well, I'd make one just like it." I said, "Well, if you would, I'd appreciate it." And she did, you know, and you know, but I didn't actually get to visit with him that day, because you know, I was still in high school. This 56, that was in my senior year, 56, 57 school year. And I was graduating in the spring of '57, and but later on, I told him one day up Graceland when we were out back talking, I said, "Buddy, you owe me, I don't know, it seemed like the tickets might have cost $10 or something like that." And he said, "For what?" I said, "For having to pay to see you when you came to Tupelo to the fair that time." But what's amazing about that was, about 1953, he came down here, and he and I and Odell went to the fair together.
Oh, just on your own?
Yeah.
Just on your own?
Yeah,
oh,
just
okay.
on, you know,
I didn't know that.
Before he had anything going, and you know, and he came down, and we went over to the fair, and we probably got there around 7:30 and spent probably till, I'd say 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning before. I tried to get him to spend the night with us, he and I and Odell, but he said that he better get back home. Said, you know, Gladys would be wondering what happened to him if he wasn't there when she woke up the next morning.
Oh my!
So even at that age, you know, and you know, and everything. Well, you know, you still, if you still live with your parents, you had an obligation to them to do
really?
Whatever they ask of you.
So what y'all do at the fair all night?
Well, we just we rode some of the rides, and we'd run into people that he'd went to school with, and he'd stand there and talk to them a little while and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
we went to that fair a lot of years together, but that particular day they had a big parade that day. This was in 1956. He was here in '56 and '57.
Yeah, to do the shows, right?
To do his shows, yeah. And then we just had a big time, you know, and at the fair had a lot of good time together. We went over the fence like we'd always done all of our lives, you know, and just had a real good time doing this and doing that. He said something about driving a truck for the company he worked for there in Memphis, and he said, but I don't want to be to do that all of my life. And I said, well, you know, I can understand that. I wouldn't either, you know.
Yeah.
And what was so amazing is him going into Sun Studios and asking Mr. Phillips, you know, about cutting a record for his mama.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, he asked me, he said, well, can you sing? He said, well, I think so, but I don't know what you think. So,
So he had already walked in the Sun studio when you talked to him
well,
in
he
53?
had, when I had talked to him later on, you know, when he had actually done this. And, he told me, he said, I just wanted to make Mama a record, you know, and he said, actually, I wanted to see how I sounded myself, you know.
Yeah.
And so I never will forget the first time that I heard it on the radio that my neighbor across the street that lived right behind the Assembly of God Church, a guy by the name of Ed Randall, hollered at me. I was washing my old car I had out there in the yard. He said, run over here right quick. Well, he was working on his old car. I thought maybe the guy had got hurt. And I went running over. He said, listen to that record. And I listened to it. He said, they got through. He said, who is that? I said, I don't know, but I said, that it sure sounds familiar, don't it? He said, I know who it is, but said, I want to see if you can guess who it is. And I thought of everybody in the world but EP, so I said, no, Ed, I really don't know. I said, who is it? And he said, this Elvis Presley, it's your buddy Elvis. And I said, no, I said, you kidding? I said, and so, I was hard-headed. I had to be so I went home and I called a radio station. And I said, that record you played a while ago, that's all right, Mom. I said, who was that artist? And they said, Elvis Presley. And so I hollered back across the yard. I said, you was right, Ed. For one time, you was right, you know. And we had a big laugh about that. And I said, could you play it again? And so they said, well, we trying to play it about every 30 minutes because we having so many calls for it.
Really?
Yeah, so we're trying to play it about every 30 minutes. So I stayed glued to that radio, and about 30 minutes they played it again. I could tell right off the old boy's gonna be pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Guy, before Elvis moved away, did you see anything that would make you think he had talent to be an entertainer?
Well, Mike, you know, he had his little guitar that his mother had bought him over at the hardware store, and he asked us guys one day right across the street here. We were visiting with the kids that lived here where the birthplace is now in one of the houses. There were 5 of those houses, and the Crowd Boys. So we were visiting with them over there by the Methodist Church one day, and so he asked us when we got through if we wanted to hear him play his guitar and sing Old Shelton. Of course, we told him sure, you know. And so we went on over to his house, and he went in, got his guitar, and came out and sang Old Shep, and then I don't know, probably strummed 2 or 3 more that we all acted a fool on, singing, you know, and just having a big time, you know how kids do.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you know, he always sang in the choir.
At church?
At church.
Okay.
At the Assembly of God Church. In fact, all of us kids made a big line for that choir on Sunday night, you know.
Oh, yeah.
I was a Baptist on Sunday morning and Assembly of God on Sunday night, you know.
So you went to different churches?
Well, yeah, I did, but that was real handy, and our parents didn't like us crossing the highway, you know, at nighttime anyway.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't any red lights or anything in this town at that time, you know, and you know, and safety and a lot of other reasons too. So we just went to Assembly of God because of course they went there regular, you know, and we went there at night. I know it would be me, Odell, Elvis. Some of the Clarks, other Clarks, and some of the Fair kids, and Magdalene Morgan attended the Assembly of God Church. They were regulars. I heard her mom, you know, she was a friend of Elvis's in their early days, and just different ones, you know. And but I have people ask me a lot of time, well, how did he stand out, you know, above everybody else? Which, you know. If it didn't any of us notice it, you know.
Well, he was just another kid.
Yeah, just another kid, you know, at that time doing that. And but we really spent a lot of good times together, even in the church house.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was just That's another one of those deals that you didn't argue about. You knew what you was going to do on Sunday morning and Sunday night and on Wednesday night. Those 3 nights, that was church.
That was church.
Yeah. If anything was said, they'd say, well, you know, this is a church night.
Didn't I hear that Elvis was in a talent show?
He was, yeah. He was in a talent show at the Mississippi-Alabama Fair one year, and he came in second place to a young lady that was raised just around the corner from us here by the name of Shirley Jane Jones at that time. Of course, her name now is Shirley Jane Jones Gillentine.
Guy, thanks for talking to us.
Enjoyed
Appreciate
it,
all.
Mike, and,
learned a lot today from you.
Well, you know, I like to sit down with guys like you.
Yeah.
You've been a lot of inspiration to me once I found out, you know, you owned the first house that Elvis ever owned in Memphis, and we've, you know, our friendship has just grown through the years, and I sure
really
appreciate sitting down and talking with you.
I've enjoyed a lot of your stories.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to leave Guy Harris now. We're going to talk to another friend of Elvis, another friend of Guy's. His name is James Osborne. I'm here with James Osborne, and I want to thank James for coming to talk to us. James is another one of Elvis's friends, and he's going to tell us a few stories. We'll start off with, where did you live when Elvis was here in Tupelo?
Well, I lived up by the school, just back of us here, about half a mile, something like that.
What's the name of that school?
I can't even think of it now. They've changed the name of it.
I think it's Lawhorn today.
There you go. Yeah, it's like Lawhorn.
Yeah.
Sure is.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I went there, and they've changed the name of it, and you hardly ever hear it anymore.
The old name? Yes, sir. Yeah.
Then I moved to Tupelo, up in the other side of Tupelo at Milam School.
Milam School, okay.
And then his daddy lost this house here.
Yeah.
And they moved to another house, and they didn't stay there long. They moved over on Green Street.
Green Street.
That's up behind Milam School.
Okay.
And we got together again and started running around together again.
Sweet.
At Milam. And at times, after my brother, my brother wanted to see him and talk to him, and I let him go with me up there one time. His mama let me go.
Yeah.
Let him go. And we got up there, and he wanted to sing.
Elvis wanted to sing.
Yeah, he go around singing sometimes, you know, just humming.
Humming.
Yeah, and so I got him up there and talked to my brother, and my brother said, if I can teach him, says, I'll let him be on my program. So he sung Old Ship and God Bless My Daddy on it. Later on, my brother worked with him quite a bit, and he got him on there and done a good job.
Now, your brother had a radio show. What's your brother's name?
Mississippi Slim.
That was the stage name.
And he is on WELO in Tupelo.
All right.
And then he left here and went up to Nashville after.
Oh, I see.
After Elvis and them started moving out.
Yeah.
But Elvis would, when he sort of learned how to sort of beat on the guitar, he wanted to come and sing for the teacher. That's after his mama bought the guitar.
Right.
And he brought his guitar and put it in the classroom there, and every day at dinner we'd all go eat dinner, and teacher said, if you go eat dinner, come back, and said I'll let him sit up there on his desk and play the guitar and sing. So he'd sing Old Ship and God Bless My Daddy.
In class?
In class,
In class, okay.
Sitting up on top of the desk.
Oh, I'll be darned.
And I thought he'd done good myself, and everybody would just gather around him, and they're still gathering around him, ain't they?
Yeah, they are. Just a much bigger crowd these days.
That's right.
Much bigger crowd. Yeah.
He was great. He was great.
Yeah.
I liked him real well because he never fussed at you. He always agreed with you and everything, and I just thought he was a great kid.
Yeah.
I loved to be with him.
Cool.
And we went places. We went up in Shake Rag, and that was back to the behind you, and we'd walk up in there, and of course some of the blacks and the whites was fighting back in them days, you know.
Oh yeah.
And there's a little black boy that I knowed real well, and he said, I'll get y'all up there. And we'd go up there and sit on the porches at the store, the big store, and we'd sit on the porch and they would play all day long up there.
The black singers.
Black singers would play and sing all day long.
Oh, I'll be.
And Elvis sat there and he would just clap his hands and sort of sing along with them, you know. And
oh boy.
he got that black music sort of that way, and he got the country music from my brother and from the preacher where he went to church.
Now,
he helped him some too.
The preacher could sing?
Yeah, he sung and also played the guitar too.
Okay, all right.
And he got a lot of music from him.
Oh.
And of course, I thought it was pretty nice. One thing that my brother said, I went in service and come back, and when I come back from service, Elvis had done moved to Memphis. And brother says, you know that boy that I let be on my program and sang? I said, you talking about Elvis? And he said, yeah. I said, Elvis has put a record out in Memphis and said he's going to the top. I said, I can't believe it. Said, do you remember what I said about him? And I said, no, I don't. I said that Elvis had a good voice, but he couldn't sing, couldn't keep a tune worth a flip. And says, I'm going to have to go and apologize to him. And about a year and a half later, I guess close to 2 years later, my brother come back through Memphis, and Elvis happened to be there.
Oh.
And he went up and he talked to Elvis's uncle on the gate, and he said, sure, said Elvis is here and he'd like to see you. Said, let me call him. And he called him, and Elvis said, send him up. So he went up there and drank the beer with him and sung with him, and they played. He said, Elvis, I got a thing to tell you, and said, I'm going to apologize to you. And he said, what for? And he told him that story.
Yeah.
It said Elvis just fell over the table laughing about it, you know.
Well, not everybody can get it always right.
No, yeah, my brother said, that's something. Said, I never would have dreamed that he had made it that big.
No, well.
He was just going to the top. Every time he put out a record, he'd go to the top.
Yeah, it must have been unbelievable. Must have been.
It sure was.
Yeah.
And it's still, you know, like there at the school, kids was gathering around him, and people still gathering around him, even though he's dead and gone. But he'll always be remembered as a good guy.
What kind of things did y'all used to do when you weren't singing, when you wasn't singing? What sort of things y'all used to do?
Well, we used to go fishing together just a little bit, not all that often. We'd go fishing together down here in this little mud creek back to the behind us here. He would fish a little bit, and then he'd get tired of fishing, and he'd go out and wade in the water a little bit. He'd pull his pants off and his shoes off, and he'd go out in the water and wade around a little bit, and I'd get out there with him, and we'd keep water on each other and everything. And when we come back in, his mama said, what come you so wet? And he said, well, we got to throwing things in the water and wading a little bit in the water. She said, you know better than that now. Said, you know you ain't supposed to be in the water unless I'm with you. And she said, oh well, said he's a lot older than you, and said he'll watch after you.
So you were the watchdog. You were the
And he was just a good boy, and his mama was a good woman too. She was a great woman.
Well, James, you went to both schools with Elvis. So how was he? Was he a good student, average student? How did he do there?
Yeah, he was a real good student, and I think he couldn't have been no better. Of course, he was about average, you know, of not a real excellent student as far as his book work, and but mine was about the same as his. we talked a lot, and of course we done good. We passed, and that's the main thing, you know, is passing. Elvis was up there pretty high. He was better than I was, really.
Yeah. So you loved to fish. You did a little fishing with Elvis, a little swimming with Elvis. What other kind of things did y'all do together?
Well, I'd put him on my bicycle, and he wanted to go around through town, and I asked his mama, could I ride him around on my bicycle? So I would put him up on the bars. I'd put a little pad on the bars, and I'd set him up on that, and he'd hold on to the handlebars, and we'd ride all over Tupelo. Back then, there wasn't much traffic, and you could ride pretty good without any problem. And we'd go around and to the different places, and a little cafe. We didn't have much money, but we'd sit there, you know, and drink us a drink or something, and then we'd get on the bike and go somewhere else. We was bad to go to the movie together at the Lyric Theater.
Oh, really?
And to tell you one little story that I thought was real good about Elvis, and we went to the Strand Theater. That was an old theater, and there was some girls sitting in front of us, and Elvis liked them girls, and I did too, and we'd talk to them, you know, and we was sitting there, you know, watching the movie and sort of whispering to them, and all at once there's some big old gopher rats. Them big old rats come running across the front of them girls. They come over the seats on top of us, and Elvis grabbed hold of her and hugged her real tight, and he just died laughing. It just thrilled him to death. And of course, them girls said, take me out of here, you know. And he said, I got you, I'm gonna run them rats off. But they didn't stay, they just run across the top of the seats and left. But he said, he come out, he said, how'd you like that? I said, oh, pretty good. He said, I liked it. Said, I don't know who them girls was, but they liked me.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty neat.
That's the only time you wished for rats in it.
Yeah. Oh, we was all the time doing things like that. And
well, riding a bike with, he's sitting in front of you on the handlebars, is that kind of not safe? Can you see around him to see where you're going or anything?
Well, the way he's sitting and everything, I sort of leaned to the right, and he was sitting back to the left, see? Sitting sideways on the bars and holding on to the handlebars. And of course then, it was real good traveling, because you didn't have you could ride on the blacktop, and it didn't have no cars much. Just now and then a car would come by you. But man, it's different now.
Yeah. Oh, much bigger town now.
Yeah, his mama let us ride like that. Of course, we'd get into town, we'd ride on the sidewalks, you know.
Yeah.
In town, but we'd go up to Duty's Diner. That was a little old freight car like it they'd made into a cafe at the other end of town. And we'd go up there and eat a sandwich or drink us a drink, and then we'd head back or go to the theater. You could get in for about a quarter. At one time it was a nickel. Get in the theater to see a movie.
A nickel.
Ain't that something?
A nickel.
And at times they'd have it like that. But we'd go to a movie and everything, and then we went to the fair together. We didn't have no money much, and we went to the fair together, and he made his picture at a place that he put a cowboy uniform on like, and made his picture, and then I put the same uniform on and made my picture. It didn't have but one uniform, and so we couldn't make them together. I wanted to get them together, but they just had one uniform like that at the place where they made pictures. And of course mine's in the book up there, and his was in that book, but I think they left it out the last time they printed it.
Oh. And
accidentally left it out. They didn't know what they did. But we'd go around like that, and then we'd go in there to the fairground like, and just walk around, because we didn't have enough money to do nothing with, except maybe to buy something to drink, or sometime we'd have enough money to buy something to eat. And we'd just stay for 4 or 5 hours, and we'd come out.
Yeah. And
we'd go back to his house, and let his mama know that we was back. She wouldn't let him go much nowhere hardly. But she would with me, because I was 2 years older than Elvis. And what reason I was 2 years older than Elvis and got with him is because my mama had cancer when she was 30 years old. and she would, they said that she wouldn't live for about 40 days and nights. They said she wouldn't live through the night. And they had her on a respirator and everything, and she had colon cancer, and they got it all though, and she pulled out of it and lived to be 92. I couldn't hardly believe that. My daddy never was sick a day in his life. He died at 76. But you never know what God's got in store for you, you know.
No.
And of course, me and Elvis, excuse me, me and Elvis that put us right in the grade together.
But you lost some time at school. You had to stay
lost
back.
2 years.
Oh.
Daddy took me out because I couldn't study, and that gave me 2 years behind.
2 years behind.
Yeah.
So
that put me right in the grade with Elvis.
I see. Well, James, we're talking about the fair. What about the famous show at the 1956 fair? Did you get to go to those shows? You know, Elvis did. He was a star this time. He was a star.
I didn't get to. I didn't get to go. I just come back out of the Army. I'd been in Korea and everything, and I was going to school to try to finish my high school, and I didn't have no time off from working, so I didn't even get to go.
You missed that one.
And I hated it so bad. I started once to quit my job and go, and then you know, later on get me a job back somewhere else, but I didn't. I needed the money too bad at that time.
Oh, that's a shame. Okay.
I sure would have liked to seen him, man.
Yeah.
He was great. My cousin went, and she was right there on the front row, and Elvis kneeled down and kissed her, and she passed out. She was like that. And I said, "Why come you to pass out?" She said, "I was just thrilled so much, I just couldn't stand it, and I just passed out."
Oh my.
I laughed at her about that. Of course, a lot of them done that.
Yeah, a lot of them
A lot of them that passed out when he kissed her. And that's amazing, you know, somebody kiss you and you pass out on it.
It never happened to me. Nothing.
Elvis was always that way. He was, the women was crazy about him.
Yeah.
And he's always was famous every way you look.
Yeah.
And still is.
Yeah.
He still is. See, when he left here at 14, I was 17, and I was going back to school and here, and I never did get a chance to talk to him. Didn't know where he went, actually, when he went to Memphis. But when he started getting famous, then I could get in touch with him, but I couldn't. They wouldn't let me talk to him. And of course, my brother went by there several times and stopped, and he knowed Elvis's uncle that was on the gate.
Yeah.
And he went up and he said, "Oh Lordy, Mississippi Slim," said, "Elvis is here and said he'd like to see you. Said he's back on a rest period." Well, brother said, "I sure would like to see him." So he went up there and he told Elvis that I said that I hoped he'd get along okay, and it looks like he's doing great, and I think so much of him, and if he ever was in Tupelo, to come by and see me or let me know. And I left a message there, but he never did come back to Tupelo that I know anything about. I moved out then from Tupelo and went to Fulton, and then after he got sick, I tried to call him when he got sick, and I lived on a farm up there in Fulton. I had 87 acres up there, and I wanted him to come up and stay with me some while he was sick, and we would probably slip off and go fishing together, you know, and that way I lived away from anybody, and they probably wouldn't have known it unless he got seen or something.
Yeah.
And of course, I never did get the message to him. I know he'd come. He told my brother to tell me hi, and my brother, when he come home the second year, Elvis sent him a Christmas card and told him to tell James that I said hi, that I'd like to see him. But if I'm ever down that way, I'll look him up. And of course, it never did work out.
That's a shame.
Yeah,
sure is. James, I want to thank you for your time. I learned a lot from you today, and I appreciate you talking to us. We're going to leave you now. We'll say goodbye to you. And our next stop is Tupelo Hardware Store. Behind me is the statue of Elvis at age 13, and he's holding the guitar. We're next going to show you where he got that guitar. On our way to the hardware store, we decided to stop here at the side of the old Assembly of God Church, just a short walk from the birthplace. The city has placed a plaque here in honor of the Assembly of God Church. This is where Elvis used to worship with his family. He was a member of the Assembly of God really all through his life, through Memphis and then beyond. He loved the gospel singing in the choir. And one of the ministers here in this Tupelo church was Reverend Frank Smith. He was a guitar player, and he used to walk about the congregation when he preached and played guitar, and he gave Elvis some guitar lessons. Elvis didn't have that many teachers on guitar, but Reverend Smith certainly was one. You know, this congregation here is too poor to afford a piano or an organ, and Reverend Smith and his guitar playing filled that musical need. You know, Elvis loved going to church. This one, the others in the area. Church to these people fulfilled more than just a spiritual need. It really filled an entertainment need, and that's what gospel singing was, both spiritual and entertainment. So we're going to leave this church in this little village they used to call East Tupelo and go into what they call the town, Tupelo downtown, and visit the hardware store. Let's go. You know, most places in this area around Elvis's birthplace home are within walking distance. We're now going 2 miles into town to the Tupelo hardware store. That's a long walk. We're just a couple miles from the birthplace now, downtown Tupelo on Main Street. We're in front of the Tupelo hardware store. You know, it was great talking to Elvis's childhood friends. Now we're going to go inside and hear the story of how Elvis received his first guitar. His mother bought it for probably, what, $7.90. So come inside. So we're now inside the Tupelo hardware store, and my foot is on the X. X marks the spot where Elvis received his first guitar. My friend Howard Hyde is going to tell us a little story about that. Howard?
Good morning,
Thanks
Mike.
for talking to us.
Good. Glad to have you in the store. Elvis came in our store in 1945. He was 10 years old, and he came in with his mother Gladys. When he came in the store, he came in the front door that you just walked in through now. And he walked on this exact same floor that you're standing on, and they came in to buy Elvis a bicycle. And when Elvis got to this counter where we're standing right now, he spotted a .22 rifle hanging on that wall up there where the poster is. And so Elvis decided that he wanted the rifle. Well, his mother said, no, you're not going to have the rifle. So Elvis got real upset and started kind of pouting and crying because his mama wouldn't buy him the rifle. Well, there's a man standing back here where I am right now, and his name was Forrest Bobo. So Mr. Bobo was trying to think of something to calm Elvis down. Well, there just happened to be a guitar in the top shelf of this showcase right here. So Mr. Bobo opened the door back here. He reached in and pulled a guitar out and handed it to Elvis, who was standing on the spot that Mike just mentioned. And Elvis took the guitar and strummed it and played with it a little bit. And his mother looked at him and said, Elvis, I'll buy you the guitar if you'll take the guitar. Well, Elvis played with the guitar some more, and he turned to his mother and he said, yes, ma'am, I'll take the guitar. And the fact is that Gladys did buy her son Elvis his first guitar standing on that floor in front of this counter at Tupelo Hardware in Tupelo, Mississippi And we like to think that musical history was made right there at that spot.
Good thing he liked the guitar.
Yeah, yeah.
Give me some history of the store. It looks like it's been around here a little while.
Yeah, Mike, this store has been in business since 1926. It was started by my wife's grandfather, and it's currently third generation owned by George Booth. And George and my wife are first cousins. We're a famous hardware store. We've got people that come by here, thousands and thousands of people that come through the store every year for Elvis. And we even have people that come through just to view an old hardware store. This type of hardware store really doesn't exist much in our state. There may be 5 or 6 of this type store left. We specialize in nuts and bolts and screwdrivers and hammers and nails and pipe fittings and things like that. But our real claim to fame is Gladys buying her son Elvis his first guitar.
And you do sell a little of everything. I remember you selling a weather vane to someone from the UK, a friend of mine.
Oh,
once.
I absolutely remember that. If I remember
the flying
correctly,
duck.
The flying duck, and in fact, she was by here this year.
Oh, yes.
And I remember you had to. It seemed like it was a convertible, and you had to put the top down or something like that.
I rented the smallest car to transport the duck back to Memphis.
Right, yeah. But we have people from around the world, from Japan, Australia, Belgium, Germany. Most of the people truly that come through the store come from the UK and
oh, yes.
Scotland, Ireland, Wales, England, and they're just fun people. And I've only been here 5 years, but I've had people to come back for the 3rd and 4th time, you know.
Now, you sell something else in the modern day. What did you add 5 years ago to the inventory?
Like I mentioned, I've been here 5 years. And they were selling a few guitars when I came here, but we now sell, I'd say, 350, 400 guitars a year. And a lot of people buy the guitar not necessarily to play, they buy it to display. And, there's no other hardware or nobody in the world that can say that when you buy a guitar here, that they can say that they bought their guitar from Tupelo Hardware, where the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, bought his first guitar, which a lot of people says that makes us the most famous hardware store in the world.
Probably are.
Yeah.
Do you guarantee people have the same success as Elvis when they buy a guitar?
No, I don't. But a lot of people, when they buy it, they say, when I become famous, I'll come back and see you. And I said, well, right. But it's fun. I mean, this is a fun part of my job, and I really enjoy the people and enjoy people like you bringing tour groups down here, because I think you've been coming I know you're probably coming before I was here, but
oh yeah,
I know it's just a fun part of this job.
It is. I'm looking at this picture on the wall behind me. So there's been some famous people that come through here to buy a guitar.
Mike, there really has, and a few years back, the rock group Aerosmith came in here, and their lead guitar player is Joe Perry. And Joe came in, had them stop the bus. They were on their way to do a concert at our Coliseum over here. And Joe Perry told them to stop the bus. There's Tupelo Hardware. And he came in with his group, and Joe Perry walked through the front door and said, I want to buy a guitar from where the king of rock and roll bought his first guitar. And I said, partner, you can sure do it. And he did. But he was the coolest guy, one of the coolest guys I've ever met. He has an Elvis room in his home just outside Boston.
That's a big Elvis fan.
He is a big one. And we have a country singer. Her name is Pam Tillis, and she's a member of the Grand Ole Opry, which is the ultimate for a country singer in our country. And she came in and also bought a guitar from me, and it was a thrill to have her in. Now, about 2 or 3 weeks back, maybe a month back, we had a famous man to come into town unannounced. He landed his plane at our airport, had an entourage with him, about 8 or 9 people, and he went to the birthplace, visited the Elvis Presley birthplace, went over here to a famous barbecue restaurant here in Tupelo called Barbecue by Jim's, and had lunch there, and then he came in our store, and it was Prince Albert of Monaco. And you talking about a thrill was having him in, and he is a huge Elvis fan, and it was pretty exciting having him to come in.
Elvis is everywhere.
Elvis is everywhere.
He is absolutely
right.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh. We're going to leave the hardware store now, the place where they still sell guitars, and go off to Johnny's Drive-In, Elvis's favorite restaurant here in Tupelo. I want to thank Howard.
Hey, Mike,
for
always
his time.
Always a pleasure to have you in our store.
Good to see you again. I'm sure I'll see you soon.
I hope so.
We're back on Main Street. You know, this was the site of a famous parade. 1956, Elvis did a show here in Tupelo, and the city put on a parade, something like Tupelo Welcomes Home Elvis. It was a very big deal, a historic day in Tupelo. Tupelo, in fact, is very proud of Elvis, as you can see from this monument put here by the city. And we're going to go from this monument to the hardware store to Johnny's Drive-In. There's another monument for Elvis there. It was Elvis's favorite place to eat while in Tupelo. So let's go down to Johnny's. You know, Tupelo Hardware is a great old store. It doesn't look like it's changed in many years. We're in front of another place. It's another great old store, so to speak. It hasn't changed in 60 years. This is Johnny's Drive-In, oldest restaurant in Tupelo, and it really does look like an old-fashioned diner. I say Elvis loved to eat cheeseburgers here with friends like James. But Johnny's had two different kinds of cheeseburgers. I had the all-meat cheeseburgers, what you and I might be familiar with. Then they had something called the dough burger. This is where they mix the hamburger meat with flour, a little bit of spice, and they blend it all together. And it tastes a little bit like a little bit like a hamburger, a little bit like a pancake. I don't know. It's not bad. You know, Johnny's like to mix the meat and the flour together to conserve the meat supply. That was a common practice during the poor years, the Great Depression years. And a lot of people in this town still like the old dough burgers. So we're going to leave Johnny's now and go to downtown Tupelo to a place that Elvis enjoyed a great deal, the old fairgrounds. We are here at the site of the old fairgrounds, and this is the site of one of Elvis Presley's most famous performances throughout his entire career. It was September 1956 Tupelo Fair, and newsreel footage of that concert was broadcast not only all over America, but all over the United Kingdom as well. It's probably where people in the United Kingdom saw Elvis in film for the first time. Today this is called Fair Park. In front of me is the City Hall, beautiful building, and then behind me is synchronized water fountain. It's a pretty place to be here in downtown Tupelo. There were two other famous performances Elvis gave here at the fairgrounds. In 1957, he was again the star of the show, and that was a benefit show. Elvis donated the money that he would have been paid to the city to buy the land to create what is now the Birthplace Park. Elvis intended that to be a recreation center for the children, and it was supposed to be called something like the Elvis Presley Youth Center. We now know it as the Elvis Presley Birthplace Park. Going back in time, 1954, long before fame, Elvis and his friends like James used to come to the fairgrounds, the annual Tupelo Fair. They wouldn't have a lot of money, but they'd walk around and see the carnival games, see the rides, see the noise and the attractions. And Elvis carried that love for carnivals and fairs to Memphis, where he spent a lot of time at Liberty Land and the Mid-South Fairgrounds. He also appeared at a talent show at Tupelo Fair. The year was 1945. Elvis was 10 years old, and he sang the song Old Shep. He actually stood on a chair to reach the microphone to sing that song. He was wearing a pair of glasses, which was very unusual. Elvis didn't wear glasses normally, then or later in life. He didn't win the big prize. We're now going to meet Shirley Jane Guillotine, who competed in that talent contest. And we're going to meet her at the old school they both shared, Lawhorn Elementary. We're here at Lawton Elementary School. We're going to talk to one of Elvis's school friends, Shirley Jones Guillotine. Shirley, thanks for coming here today.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. I'd love to hear some of your stories. You went to school here with Elvis, right?
Yes, I did. He was in the 5th grade and I was in the 3rd grade, and we sang in chapel each morning here at the school. And his 5th grade teacher was in charge of the chapel program, and sometimes she had us to do other things besides sing, and sometimes I sang with Elvis, duet with Elvis.
Oh.
And I sang You Are My Sunshine. I remember that song. And we had prayer and devotional, and then a little program afterwards.
What was the teacher's name?
Ms. Olita Grimes was his 5th grade teacher.
Okay. And so did you kind of run around and play with Elvis, or was it just the guys that kind of...
Well, he was 2 years older and he had his own friends, but we just, mostly we met in chapel each morning and did our singing together.
Oh, okay. And that chapel building is still standing here on this grounds? The old building is still here?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So you were the first woman to sing a duet with Elvis, is that correct?
Well, I don't know if I was the first, but I did sing with him.
Well, it could have been. Could have been the first. Now, there's a famous talent show, or at least one that I've heard about before, in 1945.
Yes.
And he was in the talent show. How about... Tell me about your experiences there.
When our principal announced at the fairground, which the Fair Association was going to have a talent show, they chose Elvis and I to represent Lawhorn to go sing that day. It was on Children's Day, and I remember going over on the school bus with Elvis and going down to the fairground when it was time for the talent show, and I had to stand on a stool to sing. I don't remember if Elvis did or not because it was a tall microphone. And I sang My Dreams Are Getting Better All the Time, and he sang Oh Chef. And I won 1st place and he won 5th place.
You beat Elvis?
Right.
You beat Elvis in that contest and he won 5th prize?
Right.
Did he win a trophy?
No, I later heard that he on an interview that he had given from a Memphis broadcast, that he won 5th place and $5. And I won 1st place and a $25 war bond and a trophy.
Oh.
And free rides to all the rides in the fair.
Well, that must have been fun.
It was.
Do you remember singing, or were you nervous?
Oh yes, I remember singing in the contest.
Yeah. Was it broadcast on radio or anything?
Oh yes, it was.
It was?
The contest was sponsored by WLO in Tupelo radio station.
Oh, so you had your first radio show in the contest.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, tell me a little bit about being on stage.
Well, we just took our turn to sing, and like I say, I had to stand on a stool.
Yeah.
I was a little girl. I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
Back then, the mics were very tall. They didn't, have adjusted mics like they do this day and time.
Now, when they awarded all the prizes, were you all standing as a group?
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about that.
Well, we after the contest was over, the audience, excuse me, the audience determined the winner by applause, and I guess I must have won most applause.
Really?
Yeah.
The audience did?
Right.
Oh, okay. So you got the first prize.
Right.
What kind of trophy did you get?
It was a pretty big trophy. When I was little, I could hardly carry it.
You were holding it in your hands, and it was as big as you?
Well, almost.
Really?
Right.
Goodness gracious. And do you remember what Elvis looked like then?
Well, he was a shy young boy, and his hair was light. I remembered after he became famous, I always remembered him being light hair. When I saw his dark hair on stage, I didn't really connect with that Elvis. Always the young boy that sang in chapel with me.
Oh, so he had light brown hair.
Light hair.
Light hair.
Blonde.
Almost blonde? Oh, goodness. That's not the Elvis that most people recognize.
I know.
Oh, they think of the dark hair.
I know.
So you sang on stage in the talent show, and you sang with Elvis in chapel. Did you think it would go anywhere? That he would go on to be a famous star, or?
Well, the only thing I really remember is about Elvis in his singing is he really liked to sing. He loved it. I guess more than the rest of us because we didn't go on like he did, but he really loved to do it. He liked to get up in front of people and perform.
But you had no clue he was going to be a big star?
Well, no, not really. Not at 8 years old, and not him at 10. I didn't. But
No.
I've always been so proud of him.
Yeah.
Proud to tell people that had known him at one time.
Yeah. Well, did you have any a chance to see Elvis or speak to him later on in life, or
No, not really. My friends did. I had a couple of good friends that he used to come down to Tupelo and come to see them. And one of my best friends, Elvis Sandifer, was one of his first girlfriends, and she met up with Elvis in the hallway at one of the performances that he did in Tupelo. And he said, well, as they met, he said, well, Elvis Sandifer, and she said, well, Elvis Presley. And they embraced, and he said, well, I'll be dog.
I'll be dogged. Oh, I'll be darned. And you didn't get a chance to meet with him?
I didn't really get a chance to meet him.
Okay.
I knew his relatives and all, but I didn't, get a chance to.
You knew his family?
Well, I knew of them because we all lived in the same community. And
You lived here in this neighborhood?
yes.
Oh, really?
I grew up here. I was born and raised in the same community.
Shirley, you both had a teacher that encouraged your talents.
Yes, Miss Alita Grimes she encouraged all the children that had any kind of talent to use it, and I'm sure Elvis she had a big influence on Elvis.
So much so that when he came back to Tupelo, he would see her?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
He did. And he invited her to visit with him.
At Graceland? Oh, in
Yes.
Memphis?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
She let everyone know, even though we weren't the richest community in the world, that we could reach out and do as good as anyone else, And
Oh, well, that's interesting. So so a lot of these people that went to school here were really kind of poor,
well, we were maybe not rich, but we were rich in morals and values that our teachers and our ministers and all have given us.
and she encouraged you to kind of
to reach out and do bigger and greater things. She really did.
So it would have made an impact on Elvis.
Yes, it would.
Yeah. Well, the influence that teachers like Mrs. Grimes had on Elvis motivated him to go from 5th place at the talent show to bigger and better things.
Right.
Yes. Well, Shirley, you volunteered to do something for us. Give us a little sample of what it was like to perform at the talent show.
Well, I sang this little song. It was popular at that time. It was, well, what do you know? He smiled at me in my dreams last night. My dreams are getting better all the time. And what do you know? He looked at me in a different light. My dreams are getting better all the time. To think that we were strangers a couple of nights ago. And though it's a dream, I'd never dream we'd ever say hello. Well, maybe tonight he'll hold me tight when the moonbeam shines. My dreams are getting better all the time.
Oh, that was great.
Well, that was like,
oh,
it was cute.
That was great. That was a great song. Thank you, Shirley, for giving us that little song. I appreciate the stories you've told, and perhaps we'll meet again.
Perhaps.
And from one school, Lawhorn Elementary, we're going now to Milam Junior High. So come on, folks, follow me.
Okay.
Well, from Lawhorn Elementary in East Tupelo, we're back in the heart of the old town of Tupelo. This is Milam Junior High. This is Elvis's second and last school here in Tupelo. He attended here 6th grade, 7th grade, started 8th grade here in Tupelo, then they moved to Memphis, finished 8th grade at Humes Junior High in Memphis. Elvis continued to play guitar for his new classmates, and undoubtedly it was the same guitar his mother bought for him at the hardware store. Elvis, he got along well with some of the students here, but he had some problems with other students. You look around this neighborhood, you can see it's a very well-to-do area. It's far different from East Tupelo. And the other students came from this community. They were well-dressed. They wore the best clothing their parents could buy. And Elvis, on the other hand, came to class wearing the farmer's clothing, the coveralls, the raggedy hand-me-downs, and he didn't like that at all. The students picked on him for his dress. He got in a fight with one boy who condescendingly offered to bring him an extra pair of pants and a shirt. And so Elvis came away from the school with some bad memories as well as good. And in fact, if you notice Elvis in his later days in Memphis, he never wore blue jeans, coveralls, or anything that reminded him of being a poor farmer's child here in Tupelo. He always dressed as fancy as he could be. So we're going to leave this well-to-do part of Tupelo and take a short trip north to the black neighborhoods of Tupelo. You know, the black influence was very strong here. And this is where Elvis picked up a lot of his blues, his gospel influence, mixing that, of course, with his own country background. So the ingredients of Elvis's musical career were right here in Tupelo. So let's go and talk a little more about that. So we're here in the north side of Tupelo, not that far away from the school, but a long ways in terms of neighborhood and economic status. This is one of the black neighborhoods in Tupelo, much poorer community. We're on the side of the Mayhorn Grocery, and Mayhorn store was a gathering place for the community. James told us a story about himself and Elvis coming to the neighborhood and listening to the blues singers. They would sing on Mayhorn's porch. There was a tip can in front, and that's how those guys would make money, from the tips from the audience. And Elvis was a very enthusiastic listener. A little bit later in life, Elvis gave an interview, and he talked about his musical influences. And he mentioned Arthur Crudup by name. He said he saw Arthur Crudup here in Tupelo, and he always wished that if he could learn to play guitar as well as Arthur, he'd be a blues man like nobody ever knew. And you ask, who is Arthur Crudup? Well, he is the singer of the song That's All Right Mama, and the songwriter. And that, of course, is the first song Elvis recorded at Sun Records, the song that would launch his career. Across the street from Mayhorn is one of the many churches in this community where you could always hear gospel music on Sunday nights, sometimes on Wednesday nights. In fact, almost any night of the week there's some activity in all these churches, and that was another listening place for Elvis. Just as he would later in Memphis, when Elvis listened to these singers, they would sit in the back of the church and observe these gospel singers and absorb their music. From this side, we're going to another site in the traditional black neighborhoods in Tupelo. That's also where Vernon's last job was located. We've come from the modern day black neighborhood to the traditional black neighborhood, Shake Rag, or what used to be Shake Rag. Behind me, you see the new buildings. Shake Rag doesn't really exist anymore. Vernon's last job here in Tupelo was also in Shake Rag. He worked for the McCarty Grocery Company, delivering grocery products, whatever they sold to the neighborhoods here. Elvis would tag along with his father when school was not in session, helping his father make deliveries in the old neighborhoods of Tupelo. This was Vernon Presley's last job in Tupelo. And the folks here don't always tell you how Vernon lost that job. Well, I'm going to do that now. It seems that in Tupelo, the liquor laws were very different then, and it was in fact illegal to buy and sell liquor in Tupelo, Lee County in those days. But young entrepreneurs would often go to a nearby location, stock up liquor in the back of trucks, bring it into the town, and sell it to their family and friends. Unfortunately, Vernon made the mistake of selling liquor off the back of McCarty's truck. He was discovered, and that was the end of that job. It was also in Shake Rag, this old rough neighborhood, where Elvis listened to the blues and gospel music that would inspire him so much. Sometime very shortly after, they made the decision to leave Tupelo behind and go on to Memphis. Well, this was the last of the bad news that took place during Elvis's childhood here in Tupelo. We're going next to Priceville Cemetery on the eastern edge of town to talk about an earlier tragedy in Elvis's life. This is Priceville Cemetery, Priceville Memorial Gardens. This is about 4 miles east of downtown Tupelo, 2 miles east of the birthplace. And this is where Elvis's twin brother is buried. The first tragedy of Elvis's life happened at birth. Gladys gave birth to Jesse Garin Presley, and he was stillborn. 30 minutes later, Elvis Aaron Presley was born. It was a difficult pregnancy, a difficult birth, and in fact Gladys almost lost her life. This will be the first of many tragedies that would make their lives difficult here in Tupelo. Today, Elvis's twin brother is buried in an unmarked grave in the rear of the cemetery. The exact location is a bit of a secret, and maybe it should be a secret given Elvis's enormous fame. Because there was an attempt to steal Elvis's body in August 1977, Forest Hill Cemetery in Memphis, perhaps it's a good thing that we don't know the location of Jesse's grave today here at Priceville Cemetery in Tupelo. We're going to leave this sad place and go to where Gladys worked when she was pregnant with Jesse and Elvis. It's a clothing mill on the south side of town, just a short drive away. We're heading back towards the center of town from this peaceful cemetery. Tupelo has changed a lot since Elvis's day. The cemetery was once well out in the country, and now there's homes almost surrounding it. It's really a part of the city these days. Before the freeway was built on the other side of town, this two-lane road here was the principal highway between Birmingham, Alabama and Memphis, Tennessee. This was the old Highway 78, 100 miles from Memphis, about 130 miles from Birmingham. Now it's Main Street, part of the city. So we're coming into the East Tupelo area now, and you can see the blue banners on the telephone poles, which gives us the new name of the neighborhood, Presley Heights. And we're passing by the creeks that Elvis and Guy and James and the other boys used to swim in, the old swimming hole, which doesn't look like much today. We are in Mill Village, south side of Tupelo, and behind me are several old cotton mills. And back in the 1930s, a lot of the poor farmers came to Tupelo to take factory jobs in the mills. And one of those was Gladys Smith Presley, future mother of Elvis Presley. She would work in the mills after becoming pregnant with Jesse and Elvis, and stopped working the mills after that very difficult birth. Not too many years later, Vernon got in trouble. He went to prison, and Gladys, of course, had to go back to work. She would, in fact, move to nearby Maple Street. We're not certain when or for how long she lived here. Let's face it, folks, no one was keeping track of the Presley family in those days. It was as long before Elvis became world famous, so we only know approximately where they lived and how long they lived here. Now, Tupelo was a poor city at the time of Elvis's birth, but it was also a city on its way to prosperity. These cotton mills were the first improvements, shall we say, to the Tupelo economy. The city was very aggressive at recruiting industry into this town because they knew that they couldn't rely on agriculture as the only employment. Through the years, Tupelo would recruit more and more industry. Today the town, is much larger than Elvis would remember it, maybe 50, 60,000 people here, and it's become one of the most prosperous cities in this southern region. As Elvis grew into a boy, he would seek out entertainment along with his friends such as James, and one of those places was the movie house, where they watched the Saturday afternoon features, the cowboy and Indian movies, the cartoons. We're going now into the center of town to the old Lyric Theater. So we've been bouncing around the town of Tupelo. We're back in the center of town now, and behind me is the Lyric Theater, one of the two theaters in the city when Elvis was a boy. This is a surviving theater. And as we learned from James and Guy, Elvis did a lot of normal things that boys did. They went to movies, they played games. But Elvis was a little different from the other boys in Tupelo, as we know. He really found his passion for movies here in Tupelo. He studied the actors a little more closely while watching the movies. And of course, he continued this passion as a teenager in Memphis. And as we know, he went on to a film career as well as an entertainment career. Even late in life, when he could afford to rent the theaters, his passion for movies continued. He could actually stop the projector reel, have him rewind, and watch a scene again and again, each time examining how the actors went about their business. To my left is the statue of the Confederate soldier on Tupelo. We're actually on the grounds of the Courthouse Square, which is the very center of Tupelo. And that will bring us to our last stop in Tupelo. For on the Courthouse Square, Elvis sang on radio to a live audience. We are in Courthouse Lawn, Lee County Courthouse, and this is where the legal activity for Tupelo and Lee County took place. And really, in the old days, it's where a lot of the social activity of the community took place. On Saturdays, the farmers would come to town to buy, sell, and swap, and really to visit one another. What a perfect place for the radio station to create a live broadcast. WELO would actually set up a portable recording facility right here on the courthouse lawn, and Mississippi Slim, the disc jockey, would do his show right here in front of all the farmers. And as we learned earlier, Mississippi Slim's younger brother James was one of Elvis's good friends, and that was the key to get Elvis onto the radio. And on occasion, Mississippi Slim would ask Elvis to step up and sing a song, Old Shep, or some of those old favorites. And perhaps those were the first times that Elvis's voice was broadcast live on the radio. Those little radio broadcasts undoubtedly gave Elvis the courage to dream that he might have a career someday and he left Tupelo to go to Memphis. Of course, he would start that career, a career that we all know was one of the greatest in the 20th century. So we've had a wonderful time in Tupelo. We've met some great people here, saw some very fascinating places, and if you're an Elvis fan, you must come to Tupelo, Mississippi, to the town of his birth, because you really can't understand Elvis Presley until you do so. We're going to leave Tupelo now, but we're not going to Memphis, Tennessee. No, we're going to drive 4 hours north and go to Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome to the second part of our Elvis tour. We've come a long way since Tupelo, Mississippi. We're now in Nashville, Tennessee, home of country music. Really since the days of the Carter family and Roy Acuff and Minnie Pearl, Nashville has been associated with country music. But really Nashville is a little bit more than that. It's also a big center for the music industry, the recording industry, and folks like Roy Orbison. You see this guitar is in memory of Roy Orbison, also recorded here in Nashville. And Roy Orbison, of course, is not really considered country music, but that's typical of Nashville. All types of music was recorded here in addition to what we consider country music. Elvis Presley also recorded in Nashville. In fact, he recorded in this very building to my left. This is RCA Studio B, arguably one of the most famous studios in the world, certainly in Nashville. And RCA just celebrated its 50th anniversary. That makes it one of the oldest professional recording studios in Nashville. Elvis' association with Nashville really began early in his career. RCA Records bought Elvis's contract from Sun Records at the end of 1955. In the following year, 1956, Elvis really stops recording in Memphis. In 1957, the studio building opens, and Elvis is a frequent visitor to the studio through the next 15 years. Elvis recorded many of his greatest hits inside this studio, RCA Studio B, and we are very fortunate to meet two of the folks who helped Elvis work on those songs. Come inside, let's talk to them now. Here we are inside the studio. We're going to talk to a couple of Elvis's friends, Ray Walker and Gordon Stoker. Ray, thanks for coming here today. Gordon, thanks for coming and talking to us today.
Thank you.
And so you guys obviously knew Elvis Presley.
Obviously.
From way back when, even before Elvis signed with RCA.
Yeah, we met him we met Elvis in 1955. We worked with Eddie Arnold.
Eddie Arnold?
In Memphis. And Elvis came back behind stage to meet us. He'd been hearing us sing on the Grand Ole Opry, and we, not all the time, but occasionally we'd sing a spiritual, and that's what he liked. That really attracted his attention. So he came back behind stage to meet us, and he wanted to sing some songs with us, and I think we sang a couple of songs with him. And he said, if I ever got a major recording contract, I want you guys to work with me. But we didn't think a thing of it. But when RCA signed him in January of 1956, he asked for us, and that was a relationship we had for some 15 years.
15 years. So, but Elvis.
We went into Vegas doing 2 shows a night, and we quit then because we won't do 2 shows a night.
And now we can't.
That's right. So Elvis was attracted to you for the gospel music.
He loved spirituals.
Loved spiritual music.
We sang spirituals, one gospel. Spirituals and gospel, two different things.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And we, hand clapping spiritual, finger snapping spiritual. That's what he really attracted his attention.
I
There
see.
are two different things that make a difference between a spiritual and a gospel. One is the content. A spiritual is simply a related story that gives you a moral or a theme, and normally the spiritual has a different beat. It has a ta-ta, boom, yeah, like that instead of ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. So mainly the gospel songs are right on beat, and the spirituals have an extra little beat to it that make you feel good, and it's usually a quieter song, isn't it? Usually a little quieter.
The little words are spoken together.
We get pretty loud on them sometime, though.
So I know he loved the music, though.
Oh, yeah.
He really
That's
did.
What he loved. He
Yes.
absolutely loved that type of stuff.
Well, he was raised as a spiritual human being. He has a soul and a foundation that not many people have, and his mom and dad did a good job on his heart. He didn't know how to cope with the world,
Yeah.
but he knew how to cope with himself up to a point,
Yeah.
but he was not self-protective at all.
Right. Now, when you guys worked with Elvis all through the years, what sort of music did you really like to do with him? I mean, I know there was like a set list of songs to do that night.
Can I Fall in Love, that type of stuff. We,
Yeah.
we did so many hits with him.
Yeah.
We did some 570.
485, 500.
500 songs?
600 songs. He only did about 800. So, the Jordanaires were very fortunate to be on so many of his hits.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But did you sing those songs all through the session, or were there, I'm kind of leading up to something here, or did you warm up with some music before?
Yeah, well, we warmed up, but not with the music we were going to record.
That's-
He wanted that to be fresh. The only reason he warmed up was to get in the frame of mind and get his voice working to where he could really sing. And he knew when he was ready to sing that kind of song. And then we'd go listen to the song, and it wasn't nearly as good a lot of times as the stuff we warmed up with.
That's right.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then when you get into gospel music especially, he really right on center, just spot on, as you'd say, and
Spot on.
he
Yes.
knew exactly what he was doing and how he felt about things. He knew what to put in and what to leave out. He's a master at tempos, a master at knowing the feel of a song, wouldn't you say?
And master knowing the words.
Oh.
He was the only, we worked with many, many stars and still do. But none of them get up to a microphone and sing a song without looking at the word sheet. But Elvis had all the words right up here.
He had that good of a memory?
Oh, yeah, must
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
He listened to Swing Down Sweet Chariot a couple of times, which is not an easy arrangement. You have to preach all the way through it. He went back there and recorded it without any word on a
He
sheet of
never
paper
used
at
a
all.
word sheet for anything that we ever saw him do.
So that's
He just had it all right up here.
all up there. So you had a real enthusiasm for that music.
We were doing a soundtrack in California once, and he looked at the words they gave him. He said, "Oh, I'd hate to see the scene this thing's going to be in," because he had some bad stuff in those movies. So he thought,
He had a good attitude about everything.
great attitude.
Good attitude about everything he did.
Really? He didn't lord over folks?
Oh, no. I described him this way one time. They said, "What was Elvis like?" I said, "Well, let me just tell you. If Elvis had an office and you walked into his office, there'd be 10 to 12 guys with their feet up on a desk, and Elvis would be the quiet one in the corner strumming a guitar and working on a song." That's the way he was. He just
right.
didn't care about throwing himself out front at all. He was always for the person in front of him. If he was in a conversation and even the owner of a company came up to him and tried to interrupt him, he didn't even give him the time of day, didn't even notice he was there till he finished the conversation with the one in front of him. He had that much respect for humanity.
That's right.
My goodness. Now, I know what recording at Sun Records was like under Sam Phillips. It was kind of like we start and then we end whenever we feel like ending. What was the difference recording, say here for RCA here in Nashville?
Then when
It
he
was,
recorded.
It's when he recorded at Sun.
We didn't record it, so.
Well, we didn't record his son. We started with him when he started RCA January
Yeah.
1956.
Yeah.
But Sun record recordings were different from everything the RCA did.
You know, I hadn't thought about this, Gordon, but that may have been where he got his training not to be rushed, because, you know, Sam owned his studio.
That's right.
And Sam would turn on a tape when he came in there and just let it roll.
Just let it roll.
They had all day if they wanted to, so when he came to RCA, he was ready to take all day.
Yeah, that's right. And he took all, of course, we didn't care because we were getting paid by the hour.
As well as the song.
So he
And he'd take all night for one song, many times.
was
That felt right.
that something RCA was thrilled about, or they?
No, they didn't like it.
No.
You know, they were counting the dollars, of course, but he didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they came out all right. He knew they would.
Yeah.
See, the Colonel had a contract with RCA that they had to press 1 million of everything he recorded. Now, I don't mean that they had to pay him on 1 million. They had to process and press 1 million records of anything he recorded. That means they had the public investment in there. So they had to ship those things. And a friend of ours here in town, when pressed in 77, he had over 400,000 unsold Presley records in his warehouse because they couldn't return them. So when Colonel made the contract with RCA that they had to press 1 million of everything and ship them,
Right.
then the people they shipped them to couldn't send them back. That's the way they protected themselves. That Colonel was tough.
He was tough.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he was
You know,
tough.
the publicity said already 1 million sold.
It was-
That's just to the distributors,
Yeah.
But he didn't bother to fill in those details. He just
No,
not
everything.
to the public.
not to the public. No, he made it feel like they were really sold.
That's
The company
right.
sold 1 million of everything he did.
Oh my! What was it like dealing with the Colonel? Did you ever deal with him much, or is it just strictly with Elvis and the?
The Colonel was always nice to me. He and I got along good together, but the Colonel was hard to deal with a lot of people. He gonna be God.
God.
And we got along good, and I'm glad we did, because it made it easier for the Jordanaires to do things with, various people. Because we worked with the Colonel, with Eddie Arnold, with Hank Snow.
Oh, you knew him
Yeah,
before
the
Elvis.
Colonel was their managers, and we worked with him for them. So we were we knew the Colonel very well before we started with Elvis.
So you weren't surprised by anything he said to you.
No, we wasn't surprised at anything that happened, or anything that he did, or anything that he said. But he was always nice to us. He always treated us nice, and thanks to him, we're still getting paid for a lot of things we did with Elvis.
How so?
And he I think he was mainly responsible for that.
What do you mean by that? How do you?
Well, after we get paid through after for many things that we did with Elvis that they use that the Jordanaires own.
Really? You get a royalty from that?
Yeah.
And
Not much
I
after
think
that.
the Colonel might have been responsible for that.
Oh.
He kind of looking out for us.
Yeah, he sure
The
was.
Colonel liked the quartet, and actually another thing, this is not to negate his personality at all, but we were no threat to him. We worked, and we just were hired to work, and we worked. And he could afford to be more friendly with the quartet because he wasn't managing us, and he knew we'd come when he called.
Right.
You know, he had a sense of humor. Remember when I went out to the office with you one time to see the Colonel on Gallatin Road? And he says, I got to get a picture of you, boy. He says, you bring me a picture, because he had on a clock on the wall, an antique clock. Mm-hmm. He had the Jordanaires' pictures lined up. And the bass singer, whose place I had just taken, was on the bottom of that line. It was Gordon and Neil and Hoyt and Hugh Jarrett. He said, I want you to bring me a picture to go right there. Just bring me a picture. So we went back out there, and I brought him a picture, and the only one I had was just a little bit larger than the rest of them, because it had come out of a different photo. He says, you smart boy. He said, I'll put that thing right there, a good foundation. And he took that picture, so now it's like melon head and the 3 berries on top,
He thought you were promoting yourself.
Well, no, he didn't think, he just liked it because that's the only one I had. He understood, he had a sense of humor.
Yeah, he made a joke out of it, a lot of things.
Oh, really?
He loved to play jokes on people.
Tell him one of the most embarrassing times when he took us to eat. Gonna take you to eat. Gonna take you down here to eat at a little restaurant here.
Oh, we went into a restaurant in California or in Hollywood, and we were waiting for a table. There was there was the 5 of us, 6 of us, and the Colonel. So there was 7 of us all
Well,
together.
the particular one I'm talking about, that happened once, but when I was talking, it was Rick Nelson's manager that considered the Colonel his idol, and then you and me, we had stepped around. The others weren't with us that time.
Oh,
and there were people lined up through the little
lined
lobby
up.
and out on the sidewalk. He just pushes his way through. Come on, come on. Well, we were kind of embarrassed. We
yeah,
didn't
we
know
followed
what to
behind
think.
him.
So he walks in and he sees this table right in the center of the restaurant where there's one woman sitting there putting on her lipstick with a little piece of pie left, and then one walked toward the table and came back in from the restroom, I guess. Well, Colonel says, come on, boys, I got us a table. And the manager came and said, Colonel, hold on a minute, we'll have a table for you in just a minute. He said, it's all right, we found a table here. And he couldn't do anything with him. He had people waiting, and here this big man comes in with 3 guys and is taking a table. And so the women looked up and kind of shocked, and she had a fork, and he said, you don't need to eat that. Said, you've had enough. Said, get out of here. He told her to get up and leave the table.
Oh my God.
They were so shocked they got up and left.
Yeah, they just kind of walked out like zombies.
You just wanted to hide your head? Or?
You had to be
Yeah.
prepared for anything when he
Anything at all. He never knew what he was going to do.
Yeah.
What was Elvis like? Was he had a sense of humor, didn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
His was more closed. Elvis wasn't flamboyant. He didn't throw himself out there. His was more of a personal humor.
Yeah,
You
he never would have pulled a stunt like that.
No, he would have waited till the end of the line.
He would have apologized. He'd have still been apologizing.
Oh, really?
Oh, me.
Did he kind of reveal himself to the people in the studio more than
Oh,
he would
yeah.
outside? I mean,
And when Elvis came into a recording session, even with new guys, he met them very courteously, like they were the important ones, you know. And then in a few minutes, it was old friend time.
He'd walk around to each person in this studio, whatever studio we were in, and shake hands with each person and say, "Hey, you getting me the last of that shirt you got on?" Or just
Yeah.
some little something funny to each
Yeah.
person.
really?
And that's the way he always spoke to each person and shook hands with each person.
He was
And,
just really comfortable in the workplace, and everybody around him was comfortable.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, everybody around him.
You know, most of the time the sessions, all the sessions we do, they don't have time to go around and speak to you. You know, they're watching the clock,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
they don't have time to go around and speak to each musician, each singer. But Elvis did.
Yeah.
When I met him, my first legal session with the Jordanaires was Elvis Presley, but I had done some work while I was still associate principal here in the county. I had left for a couple of weeks and gone to California with him to work with Rick Nelson and Tommy Sands and do 4 singles with the Jordanaires, which was, you know, that's pretty good to be a part-time at that time.
Yeah.
And but when I came with him on June 1st, Elvis was the very first session that we had. And we were standing right over there. If you want to shoot it right by that door, you want to back off and look right there. And we were having a conversation, and I was kind of facing the wall over there. But Gordon was looking this way, and Elvis had come in the back door. And he said, Gordon says, "Here comes Elvis." Well, Elvis was right on top of me, and he put his hand out, and he said, "Hi, I'm Elvis Presley." I said, "I know who you are. I'm Ray Walker." He says, "And I know who you are." Because evidently he'd done some checking.
Oh, he did? He had scouted you?
Oh, yeah, evidently, because we chuckled at him. But he was so warm and friendly, you'd have thought I'd known him all his life.
Really?
Oh, yeah. But he was so respectful, too. But it didn't take him but the first song to start sticking his fingers in my ears, too.
Yeah.
What'd he do?
He picked everybody.
He
When
picked on you?
Yeah, when we record, if you had a big ah or something, he'd go, you know, try to, anyway, put his finger in your ear, pull the back of your hair to try to break you up.
I did several duets with Elvis. All Shook Up was the biggest one I've done with.
Oh, really?
With him, and we were on the same mic. You know, that was
Like
we
this?
did- yeah,
Just
we did that in
side, face to face?
Hollywood.
Yeah.
We did that in Hollywood, and the studio in Hollywood. And he tried to break me up the whole time. And then right at the last of it, where the yay, yay of All Shook Up, I said, "Elvis, I didn't do that yet last." And in those days, you couldn't repair, you couldn't fix.
Yeah.
So we would have had to done it over. And I said, "I didn't do that last yay, yay quite with you." He said, "It'll make a difference. They ain't sold within, it ain't gonna sell no way."
Ain't gonna sell?
Yeah, it said it's not sold within.
It's sold about 15 million the last
Yeah, I was gonna say, it did pretty well.
Well, there's a saying in the business, well, I'm sure it's a rule in the business, that if a record doesn't sell in the first 8 to 16 bars, it's not gonna sell. It's got to grab you at the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the
That's
formula we were always told. We've
Yeah.
got to get them in the first 16 bars
Yeah.
to listen to the record, and
That's what he
then,
said. That's when he said if it ain't sold, then it ain't gonna sell no more.
yeah.
Oh, I see. The opening had to be
Yeah.
perfect,
And
or,
we've been on a lot of songs, the first 16 bars, we wish we hadn't taken the job.
oh, oh well,
Oh, well.
oh well. Can't,
Not many, we've been really fortunate.
yeah,
We've been very lucky. I don't think there's any vocal group anywhere that's been on as many hits as we've been on.
That's right.
you've been on quite a
And
few.
there's no vocal group
Oh,
around that's been in as many halls of fame as we've been so lucky to be inducted into.
We're
It's
in-
really wonderful that we've been inducted in so many halls of
You're in
fame.
the Country Music Hall of
I
Fame?
give Eddie Arnold and Elvis Presley credit for that, because had not been for them, we would we wouldn't have been inducted in so many halls of fame.
Yeah,
We sat on the stage one time, and it happened naturally, so now we use it in our act sometime, I just said, well, Gordon was saying that Elvis tried out for 2 gospel quartets and failed the audition. And I just making chit-chat, I said, well, I wonder where we'd be if he had made those auditions. And Louis Nunley stepped up and says, I can tell you where we'd be. Welcome to Walmart. Would you like a cart?
I don't know about that. I don't know about that.
But we know that we would not be working as much as we're working had it not been for Presley. In fact, millions would not be working
Yeah.
some way or other if it hadn't been for Presley.
Oh, yes.
We could still play dates all over the world. We tried to cut it off and not doing overseas dates anymore.
Oh, by
Yeah,
the
but
way,
people
if
want you though.
Well, if England wants to know, I've gotten 4 letters wondering if we're coming back to the UK. The answer is no, we're sorry. Not right now.
Not right now. Maybe someday.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But you performed on stage with Elvis as well, right? On several big shows?
We work with Ronnie McDowell quite a bit.
Yeah.
He's one of our dearest friends, and we
Right.
did quite a few shows with Ronnie
Right.
McDowell.
And when you work with Elvis, he wanted us to stand as close to him as we could get.
On stage?
Yeah, and sometimes,
Yeah.
when it the Sullivan show, the cameraman didn't want you in the shot.
Yeah,
and-
they didn't want us so close to him, but he wanted us just as close to him as we could be. Every time he'd step back, he'd step on our toes.
Really?
So it's just, that's just the way, that's the way he wanted it.
Yeah. Did you
Pretty
go?
much got what he wanted. He had his way of getting what he wanted to do.
But he knew what to do.
Yeah.
In other words, it wasn't contrived. And like, I'm sitting comfortably on a stool, and he's sitting comfortably in front of the piano that Elvis and everybody else ever played on. Who would ever think to have me to lean on the piano so unnaturally and lean over and say, I'm comfortable? See? But y'all got to set up real comfortably right here.
This piano,
He got you, Kevin.
this piano is very famous.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, well, of course, Elvis played many things on this piano, on many songs. And of course, Floyd Kramer did Last Date on this piano,
Ah.
which was a big
Yeah,
hit,
yeah.
huge hit.
Yeah.
And there's many things has been done on this piano.
Now, if people don't know Elvis well, they think of the guitar. They don't think of him playing the piano. Did he actually play in the recording sessions?
Oh, yeah,
He did?
He played. He once said, "I can't dance. I can't play the guitar. I can't play the piano. What they want me for?" And we'd say, "Man, you got what it takes. Give it to him."
He even said, I can't sing.
Yeah, he even said, "I can't sing." They want
Really?
me
He said that?
Yeah.
You know, he said the same thing Johnny Cash said, and then I guess it would be the reason they were on the same label, and they started together at Sam Phillips. But we heard both of these guys say, I'm not much of a singer, but I can tell a story. Both of them said that. And
Really?
I think they were a little mistaken on the singing part.
Yeah.
Especially Elvis.
Jailhouse Rock, that dance segment in Jailhouse Rock.
Yes.
That had Elvis very much upset. He worked a long time to get that like it came off, and they worked on the set, I guess, some 3 days shooting that, and put it together like they did, and made it look like he was really doing some good dancing. But he wasn't a dancer, and he'd be the first to admit it.
Well, actually,
Wow.
didn't they have him to do what he could do, and then they let the others go with him.
Yeah,
And you say he made up some of the steps.
The other dancers
Yeah.
went along with him.
You say he wasn't a dancer, but he somehow got people excited on stage. Now, what was he doing on stage?
Well,
You wouldn't call it dancing.
well, he didn't call that dancing.
He didn't call it dancing?
That movement that he did, they got that in the church. They were the assembly of God, and he said that's the way we move in church. When we have a happy song, we move like that in church.
We start feeling the music and just move.
That wasn't. He didn't call that dancing.
He didn't call it dancing.
And you know, the fact that they called it vulgar when he first started very much upset him. He
Broke
said,
his
that's
heart.
the farthest thing from my mind is to be vulgar.
Yeah.
And
He said to the colonel, he said, why are the preachers, why are the people saying that about me? And of course, the fact that the preachers would call him like a work of the devil or something like that
Yeah.
in a church pulpit really disturbed him.
Yeah, it really did.
He was raised in the church, and his mother especially, Gladys, was just really devoted, and he didn't want her hearing things like that. And Colonel said, look, there's nothing you can do about it, just crawl away to the bank with it.
All the way.
Yeah.
Colonel had his priorities.
He had his
oh,
priorities.
yeah.
He did. But his mother was disturbed by those comments. Do you think she heard those things?
Yeah, his mother
Yeah.
very much was upset.
Very much
Many things.
upset.
You know, she said she wished son could get a job in a hardware store and get out of this music business.
Really?
Yeah.
She didn't like the
She
music.
didn't want him in the music business.
She didn't like
She
the
called
so.
him, she said, son, just get him a job in a hardware store. She said, why can't he just have a job in a hardware store and take a paycheck home and forget it?
I can't imagine Elvis Presley doing that. I don't think he
No,
had the
not
energy
really.
for hardware work, but
Well, you know,
You can't imagine Elvis for the hardware store.
no, I can't picture that, but
it would have been a different hardware.
I think he really loved show business too much to give it up.
He did. He loved to sing, and he loved to make music, and he loved to try to, make you happy with what he did.
He liked
And he
liked
certainly
serving the people.
succeeded.
He's actually had the heart of a servant. He did, and he's serving somebody every day. And he tried to grow every day. He tried to do better music. He loved classical.
Yeah.
Really?
When we recorded "It's Now or Never," he had been listening to Mario Lanza. Oh, sole mio.
Yeah.
And he learned. He said, "I want you to write me a song like that." So the guys got together and wrote him a song like "O Sole Mio." And they changed the note about every 4 bars so they could claim the music. You have
Right.
to change the line, the melody line and the chords. Well, we got in here working with him, and he kept singing it exactly like "O Sole Mio," like he'd learned it from Mario Lanza. And they stopped and said, "Elvis said, you've got to sing it the way we wrote it, or there's nothing we can do with it." Well, he tried it again. Well, he still sang it the way he learned it. He tried it again. Finally, he said, "Fellas, that's your problem." And he recorded it note for note like "O Sole Mio," didn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, he did.
And they didn't get a dime in Europe on mechanicals.
Oh.
Couldn't
well,
do it.
Couldn't do
It was
it.
already copyrighted.
Yeah, it sure was.
Of course, they love that too. The guys that wrote the music to "O Sole Mio" loved the money they made off of his.
They were thanking Elvis Presley every day.
Yes,
Yeah. I didn't know he liked classical music. Did he play all kinds of music? Did he really?
Well, do you know how he progressed and when he came to the stage, he started doing larger productions, and he would sing up in the upper register. Oh, he loved classical music. You could chronicle his life by the songs he recorded, what they said. And
Yeah.
sometimes it was pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever even told Gordon this, but when we were doing a gospel album, he did one song, and he said, "Well, I don't have the rest of my stuff picked. Anybody got a suggestion?" Well, the piano here was turned around the other way at that time, and
Okay.
he had been sitting doodling, and he stood up and said that. Well, I was standing right over there by those speakers, where the speakers are. So I stepped up to him and I said, "Elvis, you really ought to record 'How Great Thou Art.'" And he said, "How great thou art? I don't know. I don't know how great thou art." And I said, "Well, George Beverly Shea sings it at Billy Graham crusades, and the Chuck Wagon Gang have recorded it. We've recorded it, and we're getting a lot of country artists to record it. It's a good song." He said, "Well, you think I should?" I said, "Well, if you do, you'll be the signature of the song, and the song will be your signature." He said, "Okay." So I went out to the car and got a songbook, and we stood right here and taught him that song. And I knew during the words, he got real somber, that he was starting to have a few problems with the music business. But here's what I never really told Gordon. In the 80s, 70s and 80s, I was out on the road doing some congregational singings too. Like I had over 12,000 in Houston at the Glass Dome. And what I would do is I would copy the songs that weren't in the book and I'd pass them out. Well, the people who published How Great Thou Art heard about it. And they sent me a letter and sent me a letter. I said, huh. So I just called their number and I talked to the head honcho. I said, you're getting after me for copying How Great Thou Art just so these people can learn your song and sing it? I said, I was the one that gave this song to Elvis Presley. Now, if you want to know where I am, here's my schedule. Call me, because it's going to be a bad day in your life if you ever try to sue me. I'll copy him anytime I want. And they sent me a letter saying it was okay to copy How Great Thou Art. They'd made millions off of hymns in that song,
yeah, sure.
and us singing it. Tell him about Good Luck Charm. Right back there. We sang it right back there about where folks are sitting.
Which story?
Well,
Which story?
We were on one mic and how everybody was sitting around. He called Gordon and me over to the microphone.
Oh, we did?
And he said, we've run this song. He says, now, Gordon, right here, I want you to go, ah, ah. He did his hand like that. And Gordon said, you mean you want the group to do that? He said, no, I want you to say, ah, and he got a twinkle on his face because he knew he had Gordon had Gordon thinking, you know, ah,
I did it.
Ah, Gordon says, you don't want me to do that. He says, I think I do. And so Gordon and I are the only two on that record. I answered the and he did the little ah, and it was exactly what the song needed.
He knew what it.
Good song.
He knew pretty much what he wanted on every song. He was the producer of his records. It says, Chet Atkins or Steve Sholes or Felton Jarvis was his producer. They were not his producer. They sat in the control room.
Yeah.
And but Elvis was the producer.
So he had the instincts. He knew exactly what a song needed at a certain place.
He knew what he wanted, and he knew how he wanted it. So he was the producer, but somebody else get credit for being the producer.
Yeah. Well, he knew his limits too. He wouldn't let anybody push him past his limits.
What do you mean by that?
Well, he knew what he could do and do well, and he wasn't going to let anybody force him to do something they wanted him to do if he couldn't do it well. That was the same with Sonny James. They tried to get him to record some bigger stuff, and he said, "Fellas, I'm doing all I can do," and he refused too. They knew where their money was, they knew where their talent was, and they wouldn't allow it to be pushed. So, but then they grew into different things as they recorded.
So Elvis was the boss in the studio?
Absolutely.
Yep, he was the boss.
And he wasn't bossy either. It was understood.
He had a way about him.
That was an interesting trait, though. He could be the boss and not be bossy.
That's right.
Rick Nelson was really the only other person that was pretty much easy going like Elvis was that we recorded with.
Really?
He was easy going on everything we did with him. We did all his hits except Garden Party, and he was real easy going on everything he did.
Yeah.
Not as easy going, I guess, as Elvis, but easy going.
Well, he actually was quieter than Elvis.
Yeah, he was quieter than Elvis.
Less quieter, but he, no problems with either one of them.
Yeah.
They good guys.
Now,
Patsy Cline, that's a different story.
really? She wasn't quiet?
Patsy wasn't quiet.
No.
She had a good heart and a good soul, but she'd
And a
been
good
beat up
voice.
enough in the business. She was going to take up for
And a
herself.
great singer.
I heard she was tough as nails sometimes. She could spit it out.
I remember when we were doing a session over at Bradley's in the Quonset hut over there, and Patsy had come in. We had recorded I Fall to Pieces. And she'd come in, she had to come in through the studio where we were and went upstairs to where Owen was. And between a couple of the songs or a couple of the takes, I remember her coming down those steps, and she stopped and she cocked that head of hers, and put her hand on her hip, and she said, "Boys, they say I got a hit. Ain't gonna take my Frigidaire in my car now." Because she was right on the verge of having stuff repossessed.
Oh, really?
Walking After Midnight, she sold a couple of million on that and didn't get a dime for it except what she made on the road. The company took all the money. And then Owen re-recorded it, and he sold that many more.
Yeah.
put us on it with him.
So she didn't have any money till the last
Oh,
couple of years.
they gave her an advance.
Ah.
They gave her a healthy advance. They sure did.
Yeah. I'll tell y'all a little story. I may have told you this before, Gordon, but I used to live in Elvis's house on Audubon Drive. I owned it for 8 years, and I remember you telling me, Gordon, a long time ago, that the Jordanaires went down there to rehearse one day. Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got some pictures made while we were there on rehearsal.
Yeah.
And we went down there, more than once.
More than once?
We went down there when he first bought it. He always was proud to show off what he'd bought. Of course, we went out to Graceland when he first bought that place. That was Graceland before. He didn't name it Graceland. It was
Right.
Graceland when he bought it.
That's right.
It'd been used as a church, and they called it Graceland.
Yeah.
But we went down there to rehearse, just to play around. Cut up and play around, and more or less is what we did.
Hey, did you know they're trying to restore that house exactly like it was while he lived there? Have you sent them any of your pictures? They're trying to get the wallpaper. Did you send them one? They're trying to restore that house
yeah.
just exactly like it was. If you got any photos, sell them to them.
I did.
Oh, yeah. How did I not know that?
That's okay. That's okay.
That's okay. He sold his photos. Did you give yours?
I sold the house to Mike Curb.
Oh, you did?
Did you sell the house to Mike?
Yeah. He bought it from us.
It was in this studio that we were doing Surrender. And Elvis, we sang it and sang it and sang it. We were over there. He was back toward the back. And he stopped it. He said, everybody take a break. Well, that was unusual. Because when he got to singing, he didn't usually take a break. So we all stood up, and he said, Ray, come here. He said, you teach voice, don't you? I said, well, sometime. What do you need? He said, well, I want to go up real high on tonight, and I know I'm not going to be able to hit it. I can't. I said, oh. I said, the ooh vowel is the hardest one to hit if you're singing up like that. I said, come on. So we went through the door there and through the control room and into the room behind where they had the hookups and some extra machines. They're coffee machines behind the control room. We closed the door. I said, can you throw up? And he said, what? I said, can you throw up? Can you vomit? Can you retch like you're going to throw up? Well, he got tickled. I said, just do it, Presley. So he goes, I said, no, make it like you've really got. He goes, I said, that's a good start. So when he did that, I said, now put your hands on your knees, bend straight from the hips, and we're going to run the vowels. So it was louder in there. I couldn't do it here at all, but we went, A-E-I-O-U, just real loud, and hit. And when he got to the ooh, he went, ooh. I said, no, you got to keep it right where you have the A and the E and the I and the O. And so we did it a couple more times, and then finally he said, you. I told him to put a Y in front of it. I said, that's it. He said, let's cut it. So we came back out and recorded the whole song, and somebody just sent us the outtakes of where he was practicing the last 8 bars.
Well, he voice cracked.
Yeah, and everything, and he finally got it one, tonight. And he said, that's it. He walked away from it. Yeah.
He couldn't do it again.
Yeah, and he told somebody in California about that because one of his guys, well, it was Wilkinson, came and said, I just thought you'd like to know that Elvis told me you made him throw up.
Anything for a song, right?
Yeah, but he used that in all these great things that he did record. He sang up so high the rest of his life,
So that's how you helped him teach to sing, hit the high note.
And also on falsetto. He said he didn't have a falsetto. And Pat Boone says he doesn't have a falsetto, and I think Pat may be right.
Well, Neil didn't have one either.
Yeah, that's right. But he almost did because I said, well, imitate a chicken, just like she's laid an egg. And Presley said, man, you're just full of them, aren't you? I said, yeah. I said, well, and he did it. He said, well, it works. I said, well, if you imitate a chicken, and don't say cluck, cluck, do the cluck. And don't say cackle, do the cackle. So he's going, book, 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 ah. And so after we did that a couple of times, he said, I don't want to know what else you got.
I was going to say, you're the most unusual voice teacher out there.
Rick Nelson got tickled at that, too.
Oh, I can imagine.
He wanted to do something like, not Willie, who was it that would, Sons of the Pioneers, where they go, ooh. he didn't know how to switch to the falsetto. And I did the cackling to him, and he got tickled about that.
Well, it made him relax too, didn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that's about it. I really, Ray and Gordon, I thank you a lot. You've taught me a few things. Now I know how to cackle and retch. I love your stories, and
Thank you a lot,
appreciate your time.
Can you sing high notes better now?
No, well, I'm not going to show you that. Save that for the experts. Wow, those are some great stories from those two guys. We're going to leave RCA Studio B now and go to another historic place in country music history. And that's the original Grand Ole Opry House, downtown Nashville. You know, Elvis once performed there, so let's go see it now. We are here on Lower Broadway in downtown Nashville, very busy place. And behind me is a red brick building. It looks like a church. And some call it a church. They call it the Mother Church of Country Music. This is the old home of the Grand Ole Opry, the Ryman Auditorium. Probably one of the most famous places in all of country music is the Grand Ole Opry. And Elvis actually performed on the Grand Ole Opry in 1954. You know, the builder of this building, Thomas Green Ryman, really did construct this to be used as a church. It was called the Union Gospel Tabernacle when it opened. In the year 1904, when Mr. Ryman passed away, the building was renamed in his honor, the Ryman Auditorium. And the statue can be seen around the front. Elvis actually performed at the Grand Ole Opry very, very early in his career, 1954, and I believe he was placed here as a favorite of Sam Phillips. In fact, it was probably too early in his career. I suppose the audience didn't know who Elvis Presley was, and I don't really think the country music establishment was ready for Elvis. There was no screaming girls at the Grand Ole Opry performance that day, and after he was through with his songs, the Opry manager allegedly told Elvis, "You need to go back to driving a truck." We're glad he never followed the advice of that Opry manager. If he had, he would have never ended up at our next location, the Country Music Hall of Fame. Just a short walk from the old Ryman Auditorium is the new Country Music Hall of Fame building. And you know, the country music industry really didn't accept Elvis for a long time, but he forced them to change. His tremendous success forced the country music industry to change the music, make it more modern, a little more urban maybe. In fact, it became a lot more like a rock and roll band, like Elvis's music. In 1998, the country music industry paid tribute to Elvis by inducting them into their Hall of Fame. And it is an acknowledgement that yes, indeed, Elvis Presley had changed the country music genre. Inside the Country Music Hall of Fame Museum, of course, are many wonderful artifacts, including a few of Elvis Presley's. There is the gold-plated car, custom fitted with all sorts of wonderful things like a television set. And next to that is the gold-plated piano. Those are two of the biggest attractions inside the museum today. You know, Elvis really knew how to spend his money. When we started this tour in Tupelo, of course, they had no money at all. We followed his progress on our tour. We met many great people who told us their stories, went to some fascinating places, and we ended here in Nashville, Country Music Hall of Fame, where the legend lives on. I'm Mike Freeman. Thanks for watching our show, and goodbye.